All right, good morning, good afternoon now, because it is noon. Um, Welcome and thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Dan Callahan. I work in communications with the Board of Animal Health. Our meeting this morning will be hosted by Dr. Steve Cavisto, Senior Veterinarian in charge of companion animal programs. Take it away, Dr. Cavisto.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it. As the title would imply, this is a little webinar on domestic imports and the requirements for not just rescues, but anyone who brings dogs and cats into the state. The topic we've been approached and been asked to do this for some time. I presented something similar at the Minnesota Veterinary Medical Association conference. So if any of you were there, and you might have heard some of this, but we have made some changes, some additions, try to make it a little different for maybe a different audience. So with that note, I will get started. So topics today, what we're really going to be going over, we just want to kind of clarify what the import requirements are, the requirements for certificates of veterinary inspection, requirements for rabies certificates, how we are trying to help eliminate the non-compliance issues, and what happens when there are repeated non-compliance issues and their scary word consequences. So, and I'm going to go camera off now. Sometimes it affects my connection. So just for your FYI, some context, very small numbers on my screen. Hopefully it's bigger on yours. But so in 2024, these are just the imports from rescues, breeders, and others. So rescues, roughly, if I did my math correctly, around 14,000, 15,000. Let's go closer to 14,000 dogs and cats imported, mostly dogs. Breeders, somewhere around that 4,200 mark, again, mostly dogs. The other imports would be, those are people who are likely moving into the state with their pets. So around 3,500. So total around 15,600 of dogs and 3,800 some cats. So that's in 2024 alone. So not a small number. Of all those animals that have come in, so non-compliance numbers we have for you, we've processed certificates of veterinary inspection for about 106 different rescues. And of those rescues, 31 had non-compliance. So it's not we're not talking about one or two. It's a common problem, and all the more reason to have webinars such as this. So of those 31 non-compliance issues, there were 73 of those were missing pertinent rabies information. So one of the more common things we find that is not compliant with those. So in 2024, we had a total of 106 rescues, 31 of which again had non-compliant CVIs, a total number of 73 non-compliant. So 31 rescues of those, there were 73 total non-compliant. Can't see that number, but it's 158. So the number of non-compliant dogs and cats. So obviously there were more than one or maybe two dogs or cats on each CVI that had compliance issues. So that was 2024. Well, so far in 2025, still at the same 106 rescues. We've had 18 so far with non-compliance, 31 total CVIs, and 116 non-compliant dogs and cats. So, and that's what, 2.5 months. So that's not the direction we were hoping for there. So just kind of a side-to-side comparison. The rescues with non-compliant CVIs in 2024 in blue, and 25 in green. I don't think I need to belabor that much more. We get the point. So on that note, is it always necessary to have a certificate of veterinary inspection? And the short answer is no. There are some circumstances that they are not required. I don't know how often this would apply to you as a rescue, but dogs or cats that are coming in state for research at an educational or scientific institution do not need them. If someone's bringing a dog, cat, or I guess all this ferrets this time into a veterinary facility for a treatment or surgery, or any kind of diagnostic procedures, our neighbor states, Wisconsin, the Iowegians, you know them. If they're bringing a dog in to a Blue Pearl or a or something like that, they don't need a certificate of veterinary inspection. And lastly, if you're just going to be here for less than 30 days, so your aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, whomever, friends coming to visit you with a pet, they do not need one either. Cute puppy picture. So to legally import a dog, cat, or ferret into the state of Minnesota, the following are necessary. They need a certificate of veterinary inspection, which will abbreviate CVI in these slides. If they are 12 weeks of age or older, they must be vaccinated for rabies prior to transport. And that rabies information must be included on the CVI. So just a note, you might receive a rabies certificate from a veterinarian, an out-of-state veterinarian who filled out a CVI, but we don't see those. So the only information that we have on rabies is on the CVI itself. So if it's not on the CVI, that's when you're getting the emails or calls from us asking for that information. And that might be confusing to you because you're looking at a rabies certificate and don't understand why we don't know. And it's because we don't get them. We just see what's on the CVI itself. So on the certificate, the rabies information that's required, and again, these are animals that are 12 weeks of age or older. The rabies product name, and those are Vanguard, Novavax, Imrep, PureVax. Those are the three of the more, or that would be four of the most common ones. When the vaccine was administered, and the duration of immunity for the vaccine, or the expiration date. Personally, I like them both because I don't like to math, but one or the other is adequate. So the CVI itself, it needs to be issued by a licensed and USD accredited veterinarian in the state of origin. So the veterinarian who issues it is responsible for sending copies to their state health animal health agency. They keep a copy for the records, and they send a copy with the shipment. And keep that in mind when we're talking about paper CVIs, because there's steps there, which is what can slow stuff down. And then as far as it has to have a description of the animal, a species, breed, age, identification, if it has a microchip, name if it's not. It verifies that the animals have been examined within the past 30 days and that the animals are not showing any clinical signs of infectious, contagious, or communicable diseases. So a note on the CVI, the origin. So a place of origin, physical address needs to be on the CVI. So on the CVI, a PO box is not an acceptable form. And this is just for traceability purposes. If there's an issue with a dog that gets sick and we trace it back to a PO box, it's a dead end. I debated about whether keeping the next statement, but They felt very strongly about this because you can't fit a dog or cat in a P.O. box. They didn't originate in a P.O. box. They didn't spend any time there and they weren't delivered to one. I made the argument that a really small dog or cat could potentially fit in a P.O. box, but apparently it was not as funny as I thought, and pointed out that not an acceptable thing for a veterinarian to say. So, but yet here I just did it anyway. Now, you can use a P.O. box for your rescue's mailing address. But that's different. That's not on the CBI. That's your mailing address where you get your, well, it might be your business mail or whatever it happens to be. So we keep that information for our records only. So yeah, I guess that's the point there being. You can have a PO box, but can't be on a CBI. You can put the address of, I would say many will use the executive director or the person who's running the rescue. They'll use their home address on the CBI. So keeping in mind that the CBI must be filled out and issued within 10 days of examination. And then it is valid for 30 days. Now that's 30 days from the date of the exam, not 30 days from the date the certificate was issued. So you call a situation where I've been in before, where I've gotten a call, I've seen a dog, whatever, 5 days previously, they need a certificate for some reason. I fill it out. It's only good then for 25 days. You got to minus those 5 days that I've already ticked by. Side note, that is my cat. His name is Noodle, and he happens to be watching a pot of noodles boil. And my fiance sent me that picture while I was at work and said, "Isn't that cute?" And so I said, "Yep, that's very cute. Please get him off the stove." But I thought I'd share that with you regardless. Now, as of this last January 1st, the Board of Animal Health is not providing paper CVIs for domestic travel any longer. So when in the past, veterinarian, they could call us, they could get these paper CVIs and we would send them to them and they can use them. We'll be now accepting paper CVIs until the end of 2025, and at which point we will only be accepting the electronic ones. So it's just more efficient for everyone to process the CVIs. There's there's less mistakes. Excuse me. It's much more user-friendly for practitioners. If a veterinarian is using an electronic CVI, it walks them through every step and the rabies information, what needs to be in there. And most of them won't let them finish it unless all that pertinent information is in the certificate. So it's another way to make sure what needs to be in there is in there. The other problem with paper CVIs is that you recall the veterinarian fills it out. They send a copy with the shipment and they send a copy to the state vet. Then the state vet, once they get them, send them to us. Now, we've had instances where it's been 30 days since the animal was seen and probably long transported and potentially at a new home before we even see the CVI for the first time, which can be, what's the word, annoying, disheartening, troubling for rescues and for us, for that matter, when we call and say, we need rabies information on so-and-so pet, and if you can't find it, we're going to have to quarantine it, and they're already in a new home. But if the paper CVIs, that more than often than not, if it's taken that long for us to get back to you, it's because it was on paper. So the hope would be that going to electronic will eliminate that problem, or at least minimize it. One of the common complaints or issues that I have heard from colleagues regarding the eCVIs is that there are companies that well, they make a business out of providing electronic CVI services. And so, because they're making a business out of it, they have to be paid for it. So I've had colleagues or have heard from veterinarians that they don't like that they have to pay for this, what used to be a free service by filling out a piece of paper. But on our website, there is the option, and it's a free service to sign up for electronic CVIs. Now, only a USDA licensed or accredited veterinarian can do that. So it's not like a rescue can jump on there and sign up and then tell the veterinarian, hey, we were signed up, you can do this. It has to be the veterinarian themselves to do it. I heard a rumor there might be some other options coming out, free options. I can't remember where I heard said rumor, probably in a meeting recently, but I also don't recall who was going to be providing that. But I get more information on that I can share. So on the rabies certificates themselves, so when the board, again, I'm just going back to this, when we receive a CVI and it's missing the required rabies information, that's when we're going to reach out and ask for proof of rabies vaccine. So if it's on the CVI itself, we don't need a rabies certificate. If again, the product name, date, administered, and duration and immunity or expiration date, if that's on there, we don't need the rabies certificate. However, if you're not getting rabies certificates with your dogs that are being shipped to you, I would strongly suggest that you politely ask to get them. As a veterinarian, if a client came in to me with incomplete information or without a rabies certificate and said, yep, I was told by the rescue was vaccinated on this date a year ago, so it's already previously been vaccinated. And unfortunately, I would have to, as a veterinarian, say that I have no true proof that it was vaccinated. So in my eyes and in the eyes of the state and any government agency, it has not been. So what could have been a 3-year vaccine is a 1-year vaccine until we get further proof that it really was vaccinated. And a little more on that, because next there are requirements on the rabies certificate itself that need to be met in order for that certificate to be considered legal or adequate, or choose your term. I mean, just listing them, the name and address, telephone of the owner, the animal information, the rabies vaccine, the manufacturer. No, there's a little addition here now. The serial number needs to be on a certificate, rabies certificate, and the duration of immunity. It also needs a rabies tag number. Again, when it was given, when it's due next, and then name, address of the veterinarian who administered it, and the veterinarian's signature. So that becomes important when sometimes you might get a rabies certificate that we don't have, and we ask for it, and you send it to us, and said certificate doesn't have maybe a veterinarian signature on it, or it doesn't have the rabies vaccine serial number on it. It's incomplete. Unfortunately, in that situation, we can't. It's not a legal certificate at that point. We can't accept it, and so that's when we harass you again and ask for some more clarification on that, to try to find some more information for us. So what we're trying to do to minimize this, so if we notice a trend where we have a veterinarian from another state who is making common mistakes, we've been reaching out to them either directly to notify them of the non-compliant issues, just as a courtesy. If that gets us nowhere, then we will notify the state veterinarian and ask if they can intervene for us. Um, so but what we can't do is we don't have any authority to directly punish these veterinarians who aren't doing it correctly. The most we can do is on the the certificates that they submit that are non-compliant, we can check them as such, and then it gets marked against their USDA accreditation. And I guess what happens in theory is if they get too many marks, they can lose that accreditation, and then they would no longer be able to fill out health certificates. Or if I could be mistaken, but I believe I don't even know if you can sign a rabies certificate without that USDA regulation. Um, so those are the things that we're trying to do to help you, so that it gets done right, and it's not a giant pain in the butt for you. So, so lastly, I guess what I would say is it is the responsibility of the importer to ensure that the requirements are met for the animals that are imported under their care. So, long story short, if you're bringing the animal into the state, you got to make sure that the requirements on the CBI, the rabies, that they're met. It's our responsibility as a board to enforce those requirements. Now, if you get a health certificate, or you notice, man, I got this shipment in, there's no rabies information on here. And you notice there's no rabies information on the certificate of veterinary inspection, but you got a handful of rabies certificates for those animals. Just let us know and send it to us, and it's a non-issue at that point. So if you reach out to us, we can work with you on that. So so what happens if we can't figure out a solution, or we continue to have repeat problems? The first occurrence is what we call an educational warning. It's strictly for educational purposes only, just to let you know there was a mistake made. The second is what we have a notice of violation, so it's become, quote, official, to let you know that there are mistakes still being made on the CBIs. And the third occurrence, at that point, if we're not getting the rabies information that we need, we will put the animals under quarantine until we do get that information. We don't want to do that. That's a hassle for everybody. But that would be the next step. And lastly, civil penalty. So continuing to not comply can lead to monetary fines. So, and none of us want to see that happen either. So, because that was felt like a nasty way to end this particular presentation, I thought I'd put a picture of some kittens up because they're cute. And then just kind of open this up for any questions that anyone might have. And I will say, I think someone asked earlier, the presentation is being recorded and will be available. We also do have a handout, and some of you may have gotten it. I don't know that I've emailed it to everyone yet, though. And I guess I would ask Dan or Aaron, I don't know if we're able to drop it into, I guess the chat's closed, but in some way, shape, or form we can get it to you. But it has essentially everything we talked about, just kind of on a one-page document that lists the CBI, the import requirements. What do they need on a CBI? What do you need on a rabies certificate? So you have it for yourself, and then you can also share it with the veterinarians that you're working with. And because my assumption is part of the problem is maybe they don't have the same import requirements that we have. A lot of the paper CBIs that we do see, they look like they've been around for 2 to 3 decades, and they don't have all the information in there that's the information spots that are necessary. So it just might be they simply don't know. Now I would argue it's their responsibility to know where they're shipping animals to, what those requirements are, but like I said, we do have a informational form or a sheet that you can share with them to, uh, which hopefully will help. So, yeah. So that's what I have for everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Cavisto. We do have a question in the Q&A box here. Um, Other than rabies, do you have any other recurring CVI issues that you are commonly seeing that we should be aware of?
Yeah, good question. So, the PO boxes, which is why the sarcasm there, that would be another very common problem that we'll find. And the worst is when the not only the destination but the site of origin is a PO box. So that would be another really common problem we would see. Rabies, PO boxes. Uh, Sometimes not. Uh, oh, I'd ask the team. Um, what am I thinking of? Is there anyone on the companion animal team? Something you can another common problem. I think those are the two main ones, but um, yeah, I'm
So
not.
we have a few other questions here popping up, so we'll just keep moving through them here.
Okay.
The problem that we have seen is that certain states do not have the required fields on CVIs for the state of Minnesota. What is the best way to address that?
That's a good question. We've seen some people be inventive. For instance, they might, if it says rabies vaccine, if it doesn't necessarily have the, maybe it just says a date given. I've seen them kind of split the box into the product, the right defensor, and we know that's a product, and then the date next to it. That's one, I would say, splitting up a box. There on many of the certificates, the paper ones, sometimes there'll be a box kind of like in whether the lower left-hand corner, right-hand corner, somewhere that's blank, left, it's empty. There's notes that can be written in there that would specify the information that's lacking above. So those are some of the options that they can use to fill out on there. And my hope is that you won't have to ask them to do such things because they'll switch over to the electronic ones at some point and it won't be an issue. Did I
Okay.
answer your question? Yeah.
Uh, and next we have thank you for all the information. And how do we get the new electronic CVI to out-of-state places organizations we work with?
Oh,
It's
so
a,
the veterinarians themselves. So I guess if you're referring to the one that is on our website, I, I'm going to make an assumption and then I'm going to let again, hopefully one of the team will correct me if I'm wrong, or I'll get back to you with that if I am wrong. Um, the free eCVI that we have on our website, I believe, can be accessed by any veterinarian that has a USDA license. So the veterinarians they can then go on there themselves and do that. But all of these companies, of course, I can't think of one off the top of my head, are available in all of the states. And so Global Vet Link, is that one? It sounds, I mean, it sounds like it could be one, so I'm going to run with it. Um, they have the ability to access that. And it's just that some of them choose not to. And again, I don't, I have to suspect it's because there is a fee. It's not gigantic, but it's still something. Uh, so I might think maybe that maybe part of it. Maybe part of it is there might be some vet clinics that don't have, or don't regularly use computers, or they're not comfortable with the technology. So, but now I've kind of got off the topic there, which I tend to do. But they should have access the electronic certificates. The question is, if you suggest they use them, will they? And I guess that kind of depends. We've had a couple where they've oh, good. Does Kayla have something she wants to add? Or she just happened to pop up there? Oh, okay.
Uh,
Yeah. No. Okay. Um,
yeah, Kayla, I allowed your mic, so if you'd like to unmute and add something, please feel free.
Yeah, I just mentioned in the Q&A section that the veterinarians are ultimately responsible for obtaining those programs for those electronic CVIs. And at this time, there are several companies that are offering that service. And with this becoming a requirement within Minnesota and ultimately many other states, there may be other ones that will come on board at some time, but I believe the cost for each one is a little bit different. So it would be up to the veterinarian to determine which service they would want to go with, and then ultimately what that's going to cost them in the long run.
as long as her mic is unmuted, are there more? So I mentioned the rabies issues and the PO boxes. Is there any other common problems we see on CVIs that you can think of off the top of your head? And that was directed to you, Kayla.
Sorry, I'm having an issue with my mouse. Those would be the two main ones. And then sometimes not having origin information, so who it's going to, so like your rescue information. Um, I think, yeah, the rabies information and the PO boxes are the two main issues that we see the most.
Great. Thanks. Hey, Dan, can you do me a favor and unmute Jesse's mic for a second? Oh, she's gonna hate me.
Yeah, actually, all the board staff are now able to unmute their mics if they'd like to.
Cool. Jesse, can you just say hi to everyone? You don't even have to introduce yourself. Just say hi, I'm Jesse.
Hello, I'm Jesse. I can go off of that question as well with what Kayla was answering too. So yeah, PO boxes on either origin or destination address would be a common issue that we see along with missing rabies information. But the rescues are not going to be notified about PO boxes. Those are just going to be marked as non-compliant. And then that's going to go against the out-of-state vets accreditation. So our trace team is actually starting to send out monthly reports to out-of-state vets. So they will be notified that there was an issue with one of their CVIs. But the rescues themselves in Minnesota, they'll only be contacted if we're missing any rabies information.
Thank you for pointing that out. And I also, just an FYI, when you do get an email from us that is asking for more information or is a notice of education or violation, when you're reading it, just remember Jesse's voice in your head and how sweet it sounds, instead of well, my voice, or like this mean scary voice. That might help or might not, but it's a suggestion.
Thank you. Yes, I do not mean for my emails to come across as strict or stern, but they do have to sound governmenty. So I'm not yelling at anyone. I promise. I'm always here to work with you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that. We do have a couple more questions here. Coming down. All right, and next, at the end of the year, if a paper CVI is mailed in, how will this be addressed?
That's a good question. I'm gonna again speculate that if it's postmarked or if it's written December 31st, 2025, it's accepted. I think anything after that, anything dated after that, would not be. If Did we get any clarification on that specifically? I mean, I mean, we all know that the paper ones are going away, but anything from Trace team as to exactly how that happens?
I think that's something that we are still working out with our trace team. So as of now, my understanding is that we are not going to accept paper CBIs from Minnesota vets because we're not offering them anymore. I don't know if we are going to be accepting paper CBIs from out of state vets, but I can get in touch with our trace team and figure that out.
Yeah, thanks. Which is kind of a bummer, quite frankly, because obviously you're not generally dealing, the rescue's generally dealing with Minnesota veterinarians exporting pets for you. So I hope we figure out a solution that encourages outstate vets to switch to the electronic CVI, but I guess I don't know how much push or pull we have there. What else you got, Dan? Any other
Next
questions?
question. Are there requirements for brucellosis testing for dogs coming into the state?
If you are a breeder and you're bringing a dog over, and again, I'm going to make sure that I get this right. There's the age. If they're over a certain age intact, they must be tested for brucellosis. There are a reservation or two that dogs were pulled from that had a high incident and still have high incidence of brucellosis. That in those specific ones, we do require that those dogs be tested. If you are pulling dogs and you haven't been asked to have those tested for brucellosis, then you are probably fine. But Kayla, you're kind of the brucellosis expert. I'm going to let you add to that if you don't mind.
Yeah, so only requirement for importing dogs and cats into Minnesota is that rabies requirement. We do have canine brucellosis testing requirements for our licensed commercial breeders. So if there are any rescues on board that work with some of our licensed commercial breeders, if they are rehoming animals to your rescue, and they're over the age of 28 weeks and still sexually intact, they would require test before they leave that facility. So if sounds like that might be your rescue, that's something to kind of keep in mind. And then also, we do encourage canine brucellosis testing for more of those unknown origin animals. So if you don't really know, if these are strays in an area that's considered high risk for canine brucellosis, because that is a zoonotic disease and has the risk of transferring to humans, we always like to err on the side of caution and encourage you to try to test those animals prior to rehoming them. We do realize that, cost is sometimes an issue with rescues and limited funding, but if that's something, you guys can work on into maybe your protocols or have further questions on that, that's something we can talk to you about as well.
Awesome.
Thanks for that, Kayla. I just a quick note. It is not a requirement as of yet, but there has been some suggestions, a push from the Minnesota Veterinary Medical Association, their small animal wellness committee. I happen to be a member of, to start requiring heartworm testing as well for dogs coming in. They're being imported to the state. That is not a thing as of this moment, but it is something that could become a thing in the future. And you'll know, we'll let you know if that does become a thing.
A follow-up question to that, Dr. Visto. Is there required treatment if a dog is known to be heartworm positive before it is transported?
Not as of right now, there is not. I would get down on my knees and beg that you do ask them to have that animal treated before it gets shipped here. That is one of the suggestions, the desires from many other organizations, veterinary organizations, that does become the testing and the treatment, and then given preventative once they get here. So as of this moment, it is not a legal requirement. And I think, I mean, part of that is it's not zoonotic. I mean, in theory, people can get heartworm. I mean, worms have been found in the hearts of people on autopsy. It didn't cause them any issues, but gross. And the other part is, I mean, we have heartworm in the state. Yes, the mosquitoes die in the winter months, but the coyotes and the fox and whatever else happens to carry it, they don't all die in the winter months. So they're there again in the spring, summer of the next year for heartworm, mosquitoes to pick up and for heartworm to start spreading again. But I can say, and this is why I politely plead that you do have those animals treated. If not before they get here, before you rehome them. Just because the last probably dozen or so dogs that I treated with heartworm were from out of state. They were brought in through a rescue or a shelter or something else. They weren't resident dogs, if you will. I'm done rambling on that, Dan.
All right. We have one more question we haven't addressed in the chat. Again, folks, if you have questions that you'd like answered, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box, and we will get them taken care of here. Mary wants to know, it's off topic, she says, wondering about a license for rescues. The state of Kansas now is requiring a license, and occasionally there are dogs we could help there, but we do not have a license. With this new rule that requires rescues to have a license, I would assume some dogs don't get rescued and are put down. Do you have any suggestions within Minnesota on how to get licensed?
So as a rescue, yes. So there is and maybe this is brand new news to you. The same committee at the MVMA, that Small Animal Wellness Committee, has proposed legislation that they hope to present to the state legislature this year that would require licensing of foster-based rescues. Now, I don't know, I mean, if anyone follows politics, budgetary wise, anything that's going to require more money to do doesn't have much of a chance to pass, probably. But that is being considered. There are, I mean, there is a piece of legislation, a bill that is not 100% complete, but close. That we're hoping to get. I say we, the Small Animal Wellness Committee is hoping to get presented this year. So I wouldn't hold your breath that it does get passed. And like a lot of things that do get passed, those laws, usually it can take a year and a half for them to go into effect. So you'd be in a lurch still for a bit. That's what I got.
All right. Okay, well, if anyone else has other questions, please feel free to ask them. If not, if you have questions after the session, think of things, please feel free to email us. I'm going to drop a couple email boxes or email addresses into the Q&A box for you. And thank you so much for your time today. Yes, and Dr. Crystal's email is there on the screen along with his phone number. Um,
Yeah, I really appreciate everyone taking the time to show up today, to be here today. I'd like to work together with you to help you keep helping animals and doing what you do, and hopefully we can get the outstate vets on board, and we get all these little squirrely things squirreled away. And also add, if you have, I mean, I'd love to do this again, whether it be this topic or something else. If you have ideas of things that you would like to discuss, please feel free to email me, and we could certainly, maybe do this on a more regular basis, just to keep the lines of communication open, if nothing else. So with that, I will end things and just say again, thanks. Have a good afternoon and take care.